the information on how the user feels in this situation. So if you have defined how to write an error message, the user probably is scared, they've done something wrong, they're upset, so you won't use words like fatal, error, or danger, or a huge amount of exclamation points, right? You try to hold them down.
We use the term tone of voice a lot, but have you ever thought, what is the difference between voice and tone? You can think of it like you always have the same voice, but your tone can change. So your tone when you are speaking with your loved one in a romantic situation will be very different than your tone when you are speaking with your manager in a meeting. And this doesn't apply only to verbal communication, but also to written communication. And the tone of your voice, of your brand, can affect how your audience interact with your product. That's what we're speaking about today. Lenka Stawarczyk, thank you for coming here to Prague Marketing Meetup. I would like to start this episode with what we want to achieve at the end of it, which is creating a brand tone of voice manual. Why should any startup create such a manual?
Okay. Thank you for having me. I think having a tone and voice manual is important because you will talk to your customers. Any employee of yours, either a salesperson or the person who writes all the copy that you have in your company, would write in some way, would talk in some way. And it's always good that they are cohesive, that the brand comes out as a cohesive brand, then you can trust. Because when brand talks in one area, somehow has certain use the words, a certain tone and voice, but in another area they talk completely different. They're very formal in this area and very informal or funny in the second area. The user and the client might be confused and they lose trust in your brand, they lose trust in your product, and they actually expect you to talk to them as you would in person. But if you are not able to fulfill this task, they just leave. They feel confused, they're scared, and they're not comfortable using your products, so they're not comfortable interacting with your brand.
When do you think in a startup stage should we start focusing on creating this kind of manual? Should be that from day one that you create that manual, or when do you think that will be the best time to start working on that?
I think it varies on how many people will actually talk in behalf of your brand. If you're just a solo person and you do all by yourself, you certainly have like one voice, one tone, a set of words that you use, and it's fine that you just have it in your head and you talk to your users and customers like the same way. But as you start to grow and as like maybe you have first marketing hire, it's really easier to create something, to pick up your brain and put it on a piece of paper and talk with the people that comes to the company and create this set of rules or guidance for every newcomer who would be talking on behalf of your brand. Because once you grow too much and you're not able to onboard everybody by yourself, so you're not able to talk to them personally, they just tend to get lost. They tend to have this flexibility, and you don't want that. So I think like when a new marketing hire comes in, I would just sit with them and create the set of rules, especially if you're expecting your startup to grow very fast. That might be too late once you're 20 headcount.
Yeah. Who do you think should be the owner of this project? Should that be the head of marketing? Or if we have like a head of brand, should that be the head of brand? Or again, if we had head of content or head of copywriting, should be the head of the copywriting? Because like it touches all of these rules. Who do you think would be the best owner of this project?
When company creates a brand or brand guidelines, a lot of them only think about like the visual part, but it's only half of it. The brand actually consists of like the visual part, the visual identity, and also your voice and tone identity. And altogether, this means this is your brand or brand essence, what I call it. And I think like if you have a brand marketer or a brand owner of your brand, he should be or she should be the owner and taking care that everybody is on board, everybody is aware of the guide, and everybody is happy to talk like that.
Mhm.
Because if they are not in sync, this might mean that they also get a little bit flexible here and there, and you don't want that.
That's what we'll be doing today, diving deep into how can we create this unified manual. But at the beginning, let me thank you for coming here. Lenka Stawarczyk, you have been working in marketing for more than 10 years, holding different positions. Right now, you are a mentor at Holkey's Marketingo. You are also consulting multiple B2B companies for branding and for UX copy. You have a family, you have a nice little daughter. How are you managing all of that?
Not great at the moment, but I'm doing my best. I mean, my biggest supporter is my husband, who also works for a startup.
Mhm.
He recently started, so we're trying to hustle as much as we can. And he's a UX designer, so we get to even work on a couple of projects together. Or he's my guidance when it comes to UX, and he's switched with me on the maternity leave for a year,
Mhm.
which was awesome. And
Nice.
yeah, I just love the partnership that we have in order to, so everybody each of us won't stop their career and just support each other, so everybody can like move at their pace and not neglect our daughter at the same time. But it's a hustle.
All right, so let's jump right in. So we would like to create a tone of voice manual for our SaaS product.
Yeah.
What should be the first step?
The first step, if you are decided that you really need this, I would question if you really need it. But if you are at the stage that we talked about, it might be a good idea. Then you can do this by yourself, like in-house, or you can invite a large agency, which I wouldn't recommend, but you might want to do this in-house, like with a consultant, or even by your own, if you have skilled enough people in your team, or maybe invite somebody to facilitate. And the first step would be to have a look on the situations where it didn't just click, where something seems off.
Mhm.
And I suggest you have a list of these situations where somebody talked or wrote something that wasn't in sync with the brand, and you have like this amount of research on your own side, and then conduct another research of your users, your clients, get to know them, how they talk, listen to them like extensively, listen to your sales team, and then create a couple of workshops. This shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 weeks. It's quite short process. I think
Mhm.
brands usually think that this may take months, but it's quite short.
Mhm.
Because once you put everybody on the table and you talk about it, then it's quite easy to understand internally how the people think, externally what the clients say. You don't need to even talk one-to-one to many clients. It's not possible always to talk to clients. So there are techniques and sources where you can get that knowledge, put it on a table, on a piece of paper, and then dig into it and start crafting the tone and voice manual piece by piece, taking the phrases that your users use, taking the arguments that worked on your sales team, taking the messages that you are putting out there and they work or don't work and why they don't. So analyze what you have.
You mentioned multiple points here where which I would like to break down a little bit. The first was getting everyone on the table. Which stakeholders do you think should be involved in that project?
I would just say that it's very important to get stakeholders for most of the departments of the company in the beginning, because it's not a wise idea to just come up with a voice and tone manual in the end and just put it on the table and say, okay, this is your guidance now, and you're gonna stick to it. Not everybody would be happy to oblige, and it's really easy to incorporate those people from the company, because everybody will have their idea. So have their representative of your sales team, definitely have there somebody for customer care or customer success. If you have that department, is a wise idea as well. Product people, very important, because tone of voice really sets the rules when you talk to like many people. It's not one to one. It's like your product or your customer success representative talking to many people, right? So one to many, and everybody who is in that role should be sitting on the table. So product people, customer success, customer care, sales people, and marketing, of course. And if you have somebody there for like a management, I would suggest that too, like top management, maybe VP of marketing, VP of product. It's really good. And then I tend to get there somebody from like developers as well, because they have their own language. And they necessarily don't come up with ideas how the tone and voice should be, but it's valuable for them to listen to everybody else on the table, and they also have a couple of ideas on like the how to execute it, how this will translate into the product design. Of course, UX designer, if you have them, should sit on the table as well. Yeah. So like a mixture of people. 10 people tops, I would say. So for me, when I have those workshops, 10 people tops is like manageable. After that, I would just split it into more groups, but I try to keep it on one table so everybody can hear everybody else. Yeah. If you just talk to one-on-one, it's not the same discussion.
It makes sense. And how do you usually run this workshop? So what kind of questions do you ask them to start the conversation?
I try to first explain what it means. I tell them that if you text a message to your loved one, to your spouse, and then you just take the phone and give it to your older brother or a very younger brother, and they start texting on your behalf, your spouse would seem a little bit off. And this is like how I explain what's important to have like a cohesive tone and voice branding and guidelines. And then we start to talk about how they see their brand. If they can tell me if their brand would be a person, how would they look like? How would they talk like? About what they will talk about? Is it a distinguished man? Is it a goofy dude? I don't know. And everybody starts talking, and it's really fun, like exercise to try to impersonate this brand into a person. And then once we have this, we have like a couple more exercises with like two workshops. We talk about the person and personality of the brand, the sense, the level of humor that we should use or shouldn't use. Some brands even have like a swear words. Is there a safe place for our brand? Isn't it? So we have like these personality workshops and exercises. We also then have like a list of words that we use or that our users use, because you don't want to sound just like yourself. You want to talk like your users talk, not just like you talk in your company in your like glass boxes here. Yeah. You have to reflect on how your users talk, but you also want to differentiate yourself from the other brands on the same field.
Definitely. We did the exercise here at DataDo, and one thing that we wanted to do, and actually the management insisted on, they said, no, we want everyone in the company to have a voice on that. But as you said, like, if you have more than 10 people in the room, it's not going to be manageable. So what we did, actually, we just created like a survey, a Google form, and just, send everyone in the company, hey, we would like you to vote and write all your notes, all your ideas. And then we had the workshop that people who were working on the project, like 6-7 people, and we had 3-4 different workshops discussing all the ideas that everyone chipped in. And I think it was very insightful how you see different people in the company think about the brand in a totally different way. Like, luckily, like the majority, like 70% of the people agreed on some ideas, but at the same time you can see no, like people have a very different idea about the brand, which is a problem. Like, no, you need the whole company that agree, okay, this is our brand, we know what our values, we know the character of the brand, we know the tone of voice of our brand. So it was definitely a very insightful project, let's say. So my next question will be about speaking to the customer, which is definitely a very important task here. How do you go about that? So how many customers do you think is appropriate to speak to, and how does the conversation go like?
As I said before, when you are in B2B field, SaaS, for my example, mostly SaaS companies, it's very hard to meet some of the clients one-on-one or try to talk to them as an externist, especially. So I'm trying to sit with sales team and listen to their calls. But I always have to get the permission. But I'm trying to get on their calls, trying to hear from the customer care team what issues they were solving, and also to listen to even co-lead some of those calls. I'm trying to dig into whatever documentations or transcript of interviews with their clients or qualitative research the company has, and I'm also talking to UX design team, or maybe even see like how their user research is going. And if you still don't have like enough information and you're not able to meet the clients, go to Facebook groups where they meet, when they talk, and like observe what they talk about, what words they use, what phrases they use. I mean, there are like 1 billion people visiting Facebook groups every day. So there must be a group for your niche. And if there's not, just create one. And I know people will come and discuss. So try to not only like listen to like 5 clients, which is okay and which is great. If you can sit with 5 or 10 clients, 10 tops, I don't think you will get the idea, even if you just talk to 5 or even prospects. It doesn't have to be a client. If it's hard to reach, you can just find among your community 5 people, 5 prospects, and just sit with them, talk with them, and listen. Listening is way more important in this than just talking.
I very much agree with that. It's usually quite difficult to get the customer to speak with you, and from experience, just as you said, just sitting on the sales calls, of course with the permission, and just sitting there passively, just listening and taking notes, it gives you a lot of information about the target audience that you are creating the content for and that you are marketing to. So it's definitely one advice I will highly recommend to anyone just sitting in sales calls. It's very, very beneficial.
Just shut up and listen.
Yeah. For this manual, tone of voice manual, what do you have in there? What do you need to put on that paper? I assume it's gonna be a digital paper, but what do you need to have there?
As you said before, I would start with the values. Maybe you know that golden circle exercise that Simon Sinek, it's very old. I think it's like 10 or 15 years old scheme, but I think it makes sense to just sit with and start with that. So have your values there and make sure everybody is on board with them, everybody appreciates it and lives it in the company, and everybody's at least okay with those values. So visualize the values, talk about the values, why you have it there, and how this translates into the voice of the brand. Also, I would have like the personality defined, like sense of humor, sense of formality, the amount of text, the pace that you also used, and the toolbox of the words as well. I know that some brands and some companies even have like very extensive toolbox with words they use and they don't use, especially when you really need to be very credible as like banking institutions and stuff like that. They have defined how they write time, how they write currency, what words they don't use so they don't scare people, and like very extensive tone of voice manuals. And I think it makes sense when you're really like on like when it's hard to persuade your customer, and there's when you work on a field that really needs a lot of trust from the customer, so they give you their banking info, or maybe telco companies as well.
Like if I would give an example about tone of voice manual, I have like two examples that I really like, which are MailChimp and Duolingo. Both of them has their brand manuals and tone of voice publicly on their website. You need to it's not easy to access. Just if you Google it, you're gonna find it right away. But as you said, it's very extensive with very detailed examples. Hey, you should not use this. Instead, use that, and explaining how to articulate these theories. This example. So yeah, we have our tone of voice sounds, let's say, humor. What kind of humor? Like I remember MailChimp, they call we have dry humor, if I remember correctly, and then they like, what does this mean in specific examples? Yeah. Exactly.
And I think what's nice and was amazing about MailChimp, or it's called voiceandtone.com, I think, and what they created is they have like all these pieces of copy and how the tone of voice translate in these pieces of copy, and they also have for each piece the information on how the user feels in this situation. So if you have defined how to write an error message, you say, okay, so the user probably is scared, they've done something wrong, they're upset, and they feel this and this and that. So you won't use words like fatal, error, or danger, or a huge amount of exclamation points, right? You try to calm them down, and this what the message should be. And it's just it's an example. You don't have to copy the same message for every error message in your product, but it's a good example. And they are always thinking about how the user feels in that situation. If they're happy, it's a success message. You can even put there a little bit of humor, but you don't make fun of them when they when there's an even error on your side, not even like their fault.
This is one mistake that we do a lot when speaking about micro copy, like copy for the product, that we try to be as informative as we can, but we forget about the emotion of the user, as you explained. So again, if you are speaking with your friend and your friend is very sad about a situation that happened with them, your tone will be different than if they just won the lottery, right? So you have to apply the same for your customer. You need to understand what are their feelings when they are taking that action on the product, and change the tone accordingly. Who should be using and following this tone of voice manual? Like, do you think the sales team, for example, should take that manual and be following it? The customer support team, do you think this is important, or is just only for the product and marketing messaging?
Originally, tone and voice manuals usually is just for the written content everywhere. Product, website, social. So anybody who is speaking on behalf of your brand online should follow this. The question is on the sales team. As I said before, you should include them into creating tone and voice manuals. So it should really be quite similar to how they talk to their customers. And I mean, we do this based on how our clients and how our users talk. So it's important for them to know of it, but they shouldn't stick to it very strictly, because they talk one-on-one. And when you talk one-on-one, the beauty of sales team is that they know the client. They know if they're funny or what if they're happy with our solution, or if there's something like if they're questioning the retention with our tool or with our software, and they are the magician of the words at the situation. So I think it's good that they are aware, but I wouldn't force them to follow every rule that you have them. I would just give them free hand of how they talk to their clients, because they don't know them like well. They know them the best.
In which parts of the product you see a great value and a great difference when you actually apply this tone of voice?
Well, everywhere. Is that like every piece of text that comes up should have its purpose, and you should know what words you used and why, and how did they translate into like shaping the feeling of the client, how they talk to the client, especially like every piece of microcopy, call to action, and you should like just focus on the action that the user is doing at the moment. Think about what they do, if what you want them to do, and help them. So anywhere that you talk to users, and not only in product, but as I said, you should be cohesive among newsletters, even like invite for your event, anywhere. But product is very essential, since they are in the ecosystem and they are trying to navigate often very complex products, and it's very hard. So like microcopy is essential to, I don't know, not having a different name for the same action among different parts of your product. Sometimes when you have a booking system and you say reservations on one part of the product, but elsewhere you say bookings, and it's not cohesive, and the user might be very easily like distracted and confused what you really want them to do and how to navigate.
Do you have some examples from your experience with some of the microcopies that you change it based on the tone of voice?
I've worked with a couple of softwares, and we dived in to the product and tried to fix everything. So for example, as I said, like non-cohesive names of each of the same actions. We use, for example, like Hotjar or other analytics systems, and we see like where people get stuck, or if you have a list of like what doesn't work for the client or for the users, where they get stuck or confused, then you like jump into that part. And so maybe even we created like a set of new onboarding emails, which was great. We had like a stream that didn't really like follow the user journey, but then we saw that there's a hiccup here, and they just get stuck here and there, and just fixed it in the product. And then we came further. We fixed the onboarding streak, then we fixed like the newsletter. So it doesn't have to be everything like at once, but I would start with the product, start with the clients and the users they already have, and then you like go up there for like the acquisition, onboarding materials, acquisition materials, and like from that you can just roll it out, but the core is the product.
How often do you think we should be updating such manual?
Well, every time it doesn't work, like revisit it here and there, and check with the stakeholders if it still stands. I mean, you will find out if it doesn't stand. But usually, when there's an expansion to new market, when new set of users or a new niche you're trying to target, and this tone and voice manual wouldn't just work in that culture, in that field. So this is something that you need to think about. So expansions, a new product they want to introduce for like a new audience, maybe younger audience, or I don't know, if you already have a product that's just for startups, and then you're trying to reach enterprise companies, another event that you might think about refreshing your tone and voice manual. And you know, like from my experience, every like 2 or 3 years is a good time to at least have a look. and discuss among the original team if it still works, and if maybe the set of words has changed that the users use, or the clients, the climate has changed, and you want to maybe update it a little bit at least.
So how do you evaluate the effectiveness of creating such manual? Are there some specific metrics or reports that you look at?
Whenever you can say like the people have like smoother experience, or they appreciate your brand, so engagement rates, number of calls to customer care, even like higher conversion rates, if you talk about like conversion websites, retention rate would be like when you, because sometimes you just buy a software for a year and your adaptation is not that great. You just use like one or two features, and then you say, okay, this is very complex, and we just use this feature and we can have this free elsewhere, so why we should renew our contract? And like the adaptation of products, tone and voice manuals, like huge helping hand, along with the good microcopy. So retention rate would be
Definitely makes sense. I think that was one of our main goals, is actually to reduce the number of tickets that we get to the customer support team, and that was about understanding what actually the user is trying to achieve on that specific step, and then updating the copy, not just the words that are there, but just understanding again the emotion of the user, and updating our copy and the tone of our copy to help them to, as we say, self-serve themselves, and they don't actually have to contact the customer support for some minor issue which they can solve by themselves. All right. Do you have any final tips or mistakes that you have done in the past and recommend to people so they don't fall in the same mistakes?
As I said before, don't just create, as a marketer, and just create your tone of voice somewhere hidden and just come up with it and in the very end, and just put it on a table and say, hey, I've created a new tone and voice manual, here it is, everybody just adopt it now. So a huge mistake to just do that, or just maybe even like hiring some external agency who doesn't get it, that they need to talk to the stakeholders within the company, and they also need to see some of your users and clients and talk to them. So listening is more than talking in this area.
Lenka Stawarczyk, thank you very much for being here, and hopefully we can host you again to learn more from your experience, maybe in UX writing, which you have a lot of